Oh man. Top of the morning to you. We got one of the goats in the game today. He's in work with so many people from Kanye West to Pitbull to Jennifer Lopez, man. Irko is coming through. He about to drop some gems on us. He gonna drop some bars, man. We about to have one hell of a conversation. So make sure y'all hit that share button on your way in. Make sure you get badged up so that when you ask questions, we can see you. You know? Make sure you get your badge on your way in. Irko will be here in any second. Irko is going to be here in any second. We going live together this morning, so please hit that share button. Grab your badges. Make sure y'all got questions. Drop them over in the question box. As y'all got questions, drop them over in the question box, and we going to make it do what it do. All right? So, yes, I'm going to run down a few things for y'all this morning. As we getting warmed up, I see y'all coming in. Make sure y'all share. Legendary audio engineer Irko is coming through in just a few minutes. He about to tap in. Yes, indeed. Actually, I think he's in the building. Let's see. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. I hope y'all ready. Shout out to the bad supporters. Y'all getting it cracking already. Mixed by Toby, getting it popping. Make sure y'all share this live on your way in and cop them badges. Irko in the flesh, man. How you doing?
Wayne, good morning. How we doing?
Oh man, I'm doing great. I'm feeling good this morning. I woke up with a different type of vibe, so I think I'm excited about talking to you.
Hell yeah, man. Absolutely. Bright early in the morning. I can't believe you got me down here at 8 a.m.
Yo, that's how you know, man, that you're a dope dude for sure because I'm in the Midwest. It's 10 where I'm at. It's 10 a.m. You on the West Coast, 8 a.m. So thank you for waking up early to be with us, man. We're gonna make sure we make it worth your while, I hope.
Of course, man. Of course. No, I do like to start my day early if possible.
Uh-huh.
Usually I start my day in here like around 10 or so.
Okay.
Uh, So that is not that big of a stretch. Plus, I have an errand to do before my day begins anyway, so it's one of those days. So great.
So I
Anyway,
kind of
we're here.
helped you out, helped you get a little early start. Is that what we
That's
doing?
right.
All
That's
right,
right.
then I appreciate that. So, like, kind of what is a typical day kind of like for you? Let's maybe start off there. So, you coming in the studio early? I know a lot of times us engineers we work this night shift, but I'm kind of on the early train too. So I want to kind of know what's your day like starting off early.
For sure. I start around 10-ish. Now, this 10 can sometimes be 9, can sometimes be 11. It really kind of shifts. It depends on how it is. But it's like, early to mid-morning.
Okay.
And the first 3-4 hours are definitely the most productive. So that's when I usually start to do the numbers parts of a mix. And for that, I mean, any like EQ filtering, all the numbers based stuff, setting up grids, all of that boring stuff that no one will really hear, but it's very necessary for the structural foundation of a mix, right?
Okay, hold on. Let's dive into that part real quick. So we early in the morning, within the first 3-4 hours is the most productive. I definitely agree with that. Like in the afternoon, I'm like, I gotta have a recess and come back. So yeah, so the numbers part of the mix. I never heard anyone explain that. So you said it's like the EQs, the filtering, maybe like grid stuff. Can you like maybe go into a little more detail on what that numbers part of the mix is?
I kind of see that my work on a mix is divided in two categories, right? The stuff that's necessary for the structural component of the mix, so anything that's big stuff, determining what's the lowest frequency of the song. Usually it's either the kick or the bass, but it depends. We got to decide which one is going to be the deepest part of the song. And, once you do that, you establish where everything else is going to sit on top of, starting from there. Instagram may flip the image, but, I'm talking about the base.
Yeah.
To me, the base is here.
Okay, I got you.
So all of that stuff is usually, actions and plans and things that I take that I put in motion that are not really going to be heard per se by the audience, you know, but that is very, very necessary, just like the structural beams and the metal stuff inside of the concrete is necessary to hold up a bridge, right?
Right.
And then the second part of it is where we work on everything that will be heard and perceived by the audience. So that's everything that has to do with energy rises and movement, stereo positioning, and how a, say, lead sound could interact with the lead vocal on a chorus. I'm just throwing out examples, you know?
Yeah.
So I like to do all of that stuff once all the techie, nerdy stuff is out of the way, so that it gives me like a base of a structural integrity of everything, where then I can play around with stuff that I like, and you know, the little delay throws or whatever the case may be, you know. And that I usually do in the second part of the day.
Okay, yeah, and I was gonna ask, how do you split that up? So like you would kind of do this technical, all your editing and the decision making. Are you like taking notes and deciding what you need to do at all, or are you just kind of intuitively doing it as you were thinking about it when in this kind of first beginning numbers part of the mix?
Once the sessions get to me, I dive deep and I get to know the music and the song, and I get the song to know me also, right? So there's like a period of getting acquainted with everything, you know, like how the song is being, it develops in time, what's there, what's not there, what I think I want to do. And when I do this evaluation and get to know each other kind of moment, it's like the first date. So I want to try to see if we're going to work out. And if that is the plan of making this work out, I'm trying to understand what moves I should do. And so that's when I kind of come up with a game plan for the mix. And usually I don't move any faders, no plugins, nothing, until I know exactly what I'm going to do. Because of course, if I imagine, say I stumble on track 3 of the synths or whatever, right? And I'm like, okay, let me make this the lead. But then I get to track 5, and the track 5 calls more for it to be the lead, right? And so in that case, I don't want to waste my energy on doing something that might potentially be undone. So I want to get to know everything first. And then once I know exactly what my game plan is, that's when I start moving faders, because that's the most proficient way to go about it.
Okay, nice. So going at it with a plan, super key.
100%.
I love that. Now, do you pay a lot of attention listening to obviously that's the rough mix. Is this like the printed rough mix a lot of times, or like just straight from what you have in the session? And when you do that, how is it going from like someone else's recording session to your studio? Is there often like plugins that you don't have, or you know, sounds that you know you're not exactly replicating in your setup?
So first of all, I like to start where the producer or the artist stopped. So I don't have them remove their plugins or whatever. I just tell them, if it's a Pro Tools session, just send me whatever you got as is. If the files are coming from any other DAW, I just get them to send me the multi-tracks as they are. Now, it does happen sometimes that during the mix, I'll be like, hey, can you send me track 14 without X, Y, and Z treatment? But for the most part, I like to start where they stop. That being said, when the sessions come to me, my guys have prepared everything to where we have my template, which is basically an empty bucket of where all my mixes happen. And so I have all the music multi-tracks, the bass, all the drums multi-tracks, and the vocals multi-tracks. And at the bottom of it, I always have the rough mix. We always request for the rough mix to be sent at the time of the session being built, because like you said, it helps me to see what, first of all, what they've been listening to for sometimes months, right?
Exactly.
Right. Also to try to battle the demo-itis that often happens, you know.
All
So
too.
the biggest enemy of any mixer, right?
Yep.
But also to see, you know, since I have everything multi-tracks, I see what created that, and the rough mix, that is. And so that helps me a lot to inform me on what to do, what has been done, and what I want to do. So yeah, so by the time it gets to me and it's ready for me to start rocking and rolling, I need that time of getting to know the track before I start putting the work in. And then that's very important, you know, because, you know, ultimately I am working on somebody else's baby, you know, so I can't just go in. And mind you, also, even before this, I always get on the phone with whoever has creative control. Most of the times it's the producers, sometimes it's the artists, sometimes it's a mix of of everybody, and I do ask for their wants and needs and expectations. And so, for example, some producers do not want me to do any drops, like do not fuck with the beat, like the beat is laid out the way it is,
Yes.
mix it, and in fact, if you really can't, try not to touch it, that kind of thing, right? And then you have other producers where it's like, do your thing, go balls deep on everything.
Yes.
So depending on the situation, it's like it depends on the relationship that I have with the production team and the artist, and I know what to do in some cases and know what not to do. Of course, song one for a new artist or producer is always the most difficult one to do, because you gotta get to know each other, right?
Yes. Yo, I love the fact that you are, conducting a phone call before you start somebody's mix. A lot of time we in this culture of, you just get the files, there's an email happen, and then you kind of on your own with it. But you make it a priority to actually, pick up the phone and talk to the client, whoever that is, whoever has the creative control of the mix. I think that's super important and a great way for us to make sure that we are keeping that human connection together as we're working on things separately, right? Because you're working in your studio in LA, you might be working with someone from around, who knows where. But having a phone conversation, a video call, a FaceTime, actually, like, it just enhances that connection and trust between the client and the mixer.
It's very important. And it's communication, so that not only is for any kind of business, but even more so for music, where music is exactly that. It's communication in an artistic envelope, right? So it's very, very important. And sometimes it's hard to say, because you may get a multi-track stemmed out session with a million tracks, but maybe they just don't want to use them. Case in point, Life of the Party, Kanye West and Andre 3000. That beat that you hear on Donda is, you may think it's like 2 tracks and that's it, like the sample looped and that's it. No, that multi tracks for the beat was like this tall. There were 100
Oh my
sounds on
God.
there. But had I not interacted with who have control on it, I would have not known
Right.
what to do. So now, if
And
you
who
hear
had the
the
control on that?
yeah, if you hear the song, there's like that big 808 and the live bass or whatever. But in the original track, I think there was like 6 bass tracks. So I had to, choose which one to keep and which one not to. And until the directive was clearly defined that we wanted to go for a sample-like kind of vibe, then okay, that changed everything. In fact, my first mix of that was like super boom bap, and then they were like, "Oh, no, we're going for something different." So that's an example right there.
Yo, I love it. I love it. Yo, I love that that you spoke about your template a little bit. That's something I'm interested in. Like, what else is in your kind of session template when you're getting started? Is it, just like your time-based effects and stuff that you often go to, or how do you look at that?
No, my template has no real plugins ready besides my buses and mastering stuff, and basically whatever I use to see what happens on the buses and stuff.
Okay.
But as far as the multi-tracks, it's actually all blank. So I do have my to-go-to and my usual suspects that I would often use, but I don't have them there. And the reason why that is because even though it takes me a little bit more time to actually go to find the plugin each time I want to use it, and chances are they are more or less the same, or at least the same set of plugins, right?
Yeah.
But having the need to go and pick it allows me to not use the same shit every single day. Mixing 200 records every year, it's easy to just get to the point where you're like just computer like doing blah, 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 the same thing, and I don't want to do that. And also because it's so highly depending on the content. I give you an example. If some track was recorded compressed, like vocal track was recorded compressed, of course I'm not gonna compress it as much in the mix, because it most likely is already kind of packaged and ready to go for the mix. But that's not always the case. So sometimes you may get a vocal that had 0 compression. So now I gotta use a lot more compressors. Chances are I may use 2 or 3 in a row. So I want to keep it open and go on a case by case scenario. And same thing goes with the time depending effects, so delays, reverbs and things like that. I like to just plop them in whenever I need them. Also because most of the times those kind of effects I don't use buses like sends as to an aux. I actually duplicate the actual track, so it's right next to the actual track. So it's the same amount of work to really plop in a delay than it is to have a track with the delay bypassed or ready to go.
Got you. So you saying, so like for your delay throws and stuff, you're not like doing automation on it per se. You're just duplicating the audio track, copying and pasting down below to
Yeah,
do
yeah.
that.
And
Yeah.
even if it's not a throw, even if it's like a whole track, I
Hmm.
actually have the lead that's dry and then the reverb track or the delay track, whatever the
Uh-huh.
case, underneath of it.
And so that would cause you to use more of those plugins, in the session, right? So instead of just having one or two reverb, plugins that you're using, you might be using 20 of them for every track that you want to put reverb on it. Like, I'm just want to know, like, what's your kind of thought process in doing it that way?
Yeah, that is true. You do use more power.
Yeah.
However, you also have the ability, if we're talking about delay throws, that
Yep.
power is only being used in that little section, so then it stops. So
Right.
it's not that
Well, I'm
major
talking about like
difference.
you saying the whole track being a reverb. So you would take a lead vocal and put it on a reverb track all by itself. Like what?
Yeah.
That's a new concept to me. So I just want to know like what's the benefit to doing that versus doing it as a send and return.
You're right. You're right. For the case of the full reverb track on the whole thing, yes, it's always using. So really, you're using double the energy for that single track. However, on the say we're talking about the reverb track, I will duplicate it. So I will start with the same exact sound that you hear in the mix as the dry signal, but then I will change it. So for example, I would not have a vocal as bright as it would be on the dry track on the mix because I don't need those S's and all that stuff to trigger the reverb unless I want to go with that thing on the reverb, which I actually particularly don't like.
Right.
So I will duplicate it. Most likely I will bypass or not bypass, like deactivate completely plugins that I don't actually want to
Yeah.
use on the send for the reverb. So one of them is definitely the brightness. So whatever brightness I got going on, I probably don't. If most of the times I use 1176 for my lead vocals at 12:1, so pretty hard.
Mm.
On the send, on the reverb send, I might switch it back down to 4 or something so that it is a little more dynamic. So
Yeah.
if the vocal is intended to have a little bit more push on that line, the reverb will react to that particular part a little more. And also automations. It's a lot easier to automate a track instead of going and see the send on the aux, flip out the window and do that. I got it right there. It's a lot easier, So in different sections of the song, I can do those different movements. Speaking about energy rises and things like that on the second part of my day, right?
Yes. Yo, I love that perspective on mixing that way. And that's why I love talking with other engineers because my boy Adam, he always say poor cat, man, because there's just a million ways to skin this cat. um, so are you doing all your mixing in the box? Are you using any hardware at your studio, or what's your preference right now?
At the new studio, there's a bunch of hardware. I'm looking at tube techs, distressors, DBX 165As, 1176s, the whole shebang. But
Yes.
none of that is used on my mixes. They are only used on recording sessions. So no, I'm all entirely on Pro Tools for my mixes, and that has been the case for the past maybe 7, 8, 10 years or something like that.
Okay. Is that because of the kind of flexibility and portability that you need to work with the sessions and also the volume, right? Having to recall analog gear, going from doing 200 mixes a year, that could be it could slow you down a lot, right?
100%. When I started about 20 years ago, whatever, I was only mixing on consoles and real stuff, patch bass, the whole shebang, right?
Yeah.
Great, amazing. It was a necessity though, like meaning
Mhm.
the plugins on Pro Tools at that time were almost like I don't want to call them gimmicks, but they were like, okay, here's a EQ, just so if you want to make something brighter, kind of thing, right? And then over the years, that the plugins quality developed a lot, and also Pro Tools, the summing and all of that.
Yeah.
But I remember there was a time, maybe 15 years ago, maybe even more far back than that, where the EQs were like, okay, now we can really use digital EQs on plugins. And then after that, or actually at the same time, it was probably the reverbs and delays. Those also kind of started as digital units anyway.
Yeah.
And then it was like the compressors were like probably like the last thing to really like, okay, now we can really do that. And then I remember when, I think it was Pro Tools 8 or maybe 9 or 10, I don't remember when it was, but when they actually got the delay compensation for tracks accurately, like it was, you could actually do parallel treatments.
Right.
That's when I was like, all right, okay, now it's the time, let's go. So I switched.
Yo, I love it. I love it. Shout out to everybody that's buying badges. Y'all dope for supporting in that way. I love it. Tipping us. Also, you know, all the new followers. I see a bunch of new followers coming in, so shout out to y'all too. Yo, Irko, are you spoke about parallel processing. Are you a big fan of parallel processing in your mix?
Huge, especially for drums.
Oh
All
yeah.
the big stuff. I also have done I've done that on vocals, and sometimes I still do. Not every day, but
Okay.
kicks, snares, claps, 808s, all of that stuff. It's absolutely all parallel for me. In fact, most of my approaches for those big things is to have the original sound with literally no plugins, like just the original producer sound,
Yeah.
and then whatever treatments I got next to it, so that I can even like mute and unmute my treatment to see where we were, where we are, you know? Because
Yeah.
most of the times, especially for drums, I don't want to like reinvent the wheel. If the producer chose that sound and they did
Mhm.
whatever they did to it to make it sound like that, I need to respect that. You know, I want to respect that. And so my stuff is, you know, that little salt and pepper spice on top of whatever is there, unless we need to do some major placement changes, you know. So say for example, if the kick lives in the same frequency of the bass, then I have to move it somewhere else, right? So then in that case it will be a little bit more drastic. But yeah, so everything parallel, no doubt about it. I love it.
Oh man, dope. I love parallel stuff too. And when you're doing that, you're duplicating the tracks themselves. You're not doing a bunch of sins and aux inputs and stuff like that. Duplicating the tracks. And yes, great method. I use a similar method as well. Shout out to the bad supporters, y'all coming through. I kind of want to switch gears a little bit because I think your kind of origin story is pretty dope too. So you grew up in Italy. You were trained in Venice, right? And I heard you basically ended up going to audio school by a poster. You were enticed by a poster
Oh, you
that
know about
said,
that? Yeah,
"Do
isn't
you
that
want to
something?
do you want to learn how to record in the studio?" And so that's a little similar to my story. I was in the back of the Source magazine when I was in high school, and I saw an ad for Full Sail, and so I was like, you know what? I think I like this. So kind of tell me about that story. Actually, well, but after that, right? So MySpace was instrumental in kind of getting you your first break. Can you talk to us about that a little bit?
Yeah, it was definitely a different era. So the school era was pre-internet, so there was no, you know, available internet and communication as it is today. So
Mhm.
at that time it was, you know, Mix magazine for me. It was Scratch magazine. You know, before that it was all of that like physical, you know, flipping the pages kind of thing,
Yeah.
which is funny because I still remember, for example, you know, stories of my favorite uncle, Dr. Dre, testing out his mixes in the parking lot, running a cable from the studio out through the window and shit. I
Wow.
remember reading that stuff, you know, and you better
Yeah.
believe that I did that as soon as I could. So it was definitely a thing. But and then so yeah, after that it was you know, audio engineering school, whatever. That was a short period for me to get into the studio etiquette and knowing exactly well, not knowing, but it was definitely a moment in which my career was formed and directed to that path, right? So yes, it's true, most of the times when you get out of these audio engineering schools or programs or whatever, mine included, you don't really know how to mix an album, right? But you're definitely on the right path to
Right.
either develop your sound and your professionality, or your efficiency as an engineer, but also your business entrepreneurial stuff, right?
Yeah.
And at the same time, another major factor of audio engineering schools or those kind of programs is that you grow fellowship with people that are more or less at the same level that you are. And eventually, if everybody's lucky and works diligently,
Absolutely.
years
Yeah,
later,
you can come up
decades
with people.
later, now you're peers with the guy that runs the biggest label in town, or you go to dinner parties or car shows for me and things like that with people that do big things, you know?
Exactly. You know what? I want to talk about that for a second because that is a huge reason why I created this community that I have. It's called the Wavy Seals Elite. Is because we learn so much online, right? And a lot of us are on YouTube learning how to mix, learning how to record. And there is no community aspect to that when you do that by yourself. There's nobody to help you, nobody to guide you. And I know that one of the biggest factors in my life is that I grew up, my roommates were producers while I was in school. And, so we have this connection. And now we are all kind of at the top in our game. And I'm seeing them do dope things. And I'm doing what I'm doing. And we're able to network and get each other work still and toss jobs back and forth and ideas. So I just want to let everybody know out here that there is a community for us that's learning online, and it's called the Wavy Seals Elite. You can tap in with me anytime. I got the link in the bio. All right. So definitely dope. Shout out to the Wavy Seals Elite that's in here and all the new followers too. So
Woo-hoo!
yo, Irko, and where I was gonna go from there. Okay, so how did that you met up with a dope producer on MySpace that ultimately invited you to New York to work on one of the biggest gigs at the start of your career. Can you kind of expand on that? And I'm really interested to know from you and your perspective how networking online is different today than it was then, because that ultimately your online networking skills, what, 15 years ago, kind of catapulted your career.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, again, it's all about the communication aspect of this, right? Going the extra mile, offering more than what your clients or friends are giving you, that kind of thing. Giving more than trying to get. And
Mhm.
that's always been the case for me, especially in the beginning of my career, where I was like, I just want to be in a spaceship looking room like this. And that's really what I care for. I love audio and I want to do that. And I want to be a service to the community of music makers, or in the case of the LA recording community, it's pretty much the world, because everybody comes here to do music, right?
Yes.
And so it's very important. And yeah, the MySpace days were definitely different.
Mhm.
The MySpace scene was interesting because it was kind of like the first prototype almost of Facebook, but it was a lot more about entertainment. Actually, even music. It was a lot more about music.
Yeah.
And so you better believe I had my top 10 or however many that was. And, that was all my buddies that I was working with at the time. And one of them was my good friend B Money
Yeah.
from the Loop. That's how I got to be exposed to St. Louis and all of that, because he's from there. And
Okay.
at the time, we're
STL
talking
in the
now.
building.
Huh?
I said STL in the building, man.
That's
Shout out,
right.
you
There you
turn my
go.
hat
There you
around
go.
so you
Yeah.
know where we at.
Yeah. So that was that. Brian's still a very very good friend of mine today. We talk every other day actually.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of what happened. One of my guys on my top 10 or however on MySpace, we forged a relationship. We were both big boom bap hip hop hip hop heads basically, right?
Yeah.
And it was all only natural that I put my audio nerdism onto his boom bap MPC style beats, and that's kind of what happened. We started working together. I started mixing a lot of stuff for him, and
Mhm.
through a series of very interesting events in 2006, we got to work on Kingdom Come, and that was uh, a very big moment for my career, because having the stamp of approval of a guy as big as Jay-Z was a major thing, major thing. I mean, I don't need to tell you, obviously,
I
like
mean,
everybody in this chat knows what
that's,
that means.
I don't think it get bigger than that.
Yeah, and even more so because that was his comeback album, you know, from retiring. a lot of
Yes.
a lot of these around that. And also I did track one, which is in any album the most played song,
Yes.
period. So that was like a major thing. And of course my involvement was relatively small, like compared to what I've done on a bunch of other records. Even just, I guess, dawned on, you know, a couple months ago that I did the entire freaking album. You know, on that one I
Yes.
did a little bit of track one, so it was very small, you know, but still it was enough to get the snowball rolling, you know. And
Absolutely. Hey, a small part on a Jay-Z project is you know, that's worth a million albums at least. That's worth a
totally,
million other projects, man, for sure.
totally, totally, yeah,
Yo,
yeah. So yeah, so
yo,
that's kind of what happened. And you know, I've been in contact with everybody that has been involved, like I always do, you know. Anyone that I work with, I kind of get to become part of the family of you know, producing and doing stuff. And like I was saying earlier, hopefully when you establish this net around you of
mhm,
people networking or whatever the case, you know, everybody grows together. And that's how we both elevate, and we help each other in the growth, you know.
absolutely, man. It's definitely it's got to be a community. It's got to be some teamwork happening. Are you also working with the next Donda project, Donda 2?
Not as of right now, but who knows.
Okay. Yeah. So we do have a few questions that I want to shoot to you from our you know, our viewers right now.
Yeah.
Let's see. One is, do you, from a December Ice Cold, do you think it's a good idea for artists to send you dry vocals, question mark, and wet vocals for an example mix? So he's asking like, should,
Yeah.
if you,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I would say, you know, assuming you're recording on your own or not, it doesn't really matter. Like whenever you're done recording, chances are whoever's running Pro Tools is gonna spice it up with something. And chances actually, even bigger chances are that you have recorded through some stuff that you're actually already hearing on headphones, right? So assuming you like it, I think it's okay to keep it. It may not be perfect because, again, chances are this may have come from some recording template from somewhere. So maybe it might be too much. It might not be fitting, whatever the case. But if you like it, and if it has been spicing up your stuff and you're happy with it, by all means keep it. I think that the tactic of keeping both dry.
Um, Hold up. There you go. You back.
Yeah, the audio's on. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh yeah,
Yep.
sorry. So yeah, the chances are there's stuff there already that has been placed, and so why not? So the best solution is actually what the guy was saying, to keep and deliver both dry and wet, or dry and treat it, and that way the mixer has more options. You know, so yeah, absolutely, more options the better.
So, so that's a great idea there. Oh, my question that I had is, earlier you said that you were that you like to pick up where the producer left off and finish the mix, right? Or pick up where the recording engineer left off. Now, when you get the session, are you just literally keeping everything that they had in place? If you feel like it works, right? I know you might have some assistants or some that are prepping the session for you. Are they keeping this stuff in place and then you are going off of that, or are you stripping all the plugins down?
We're keeping everything, and one of the first things that I'll see is evaluate what these plugins are doing. So if there's like 5, 6, whatever,
Yeah.
and I see, I don't know, one that, imagine like if the first one is a EQ where we're filtering everything out from say 400 down, and I need 300, then of course I'll either bypass or I'll move it. So it's just a starting point, you know.
Yeah.
And also a lot of times when there's a lot of plugins that have gone into it, so there has been some dynamic choices and things like that. If I see that they make sense, that they were intended, then I will actually keep those, say 3, 4 plugins, then maybe leave one open, one
Mhm.
insert open, and then go with my actual treatment after, so that I know that this is theirs and this is mine.
Got you.
And in case I need to swap things around or change things, then I will do it, you know. But yeah, so yeah, I keep everything. Yeah, unless it's
So
like clearly a mistake or something wrong. You know, like if there's a auto-tune after reverb, I'll be like, oh hell no, we're not doing that. You know.
Hey, you never know. This is special effects.
True
Special
that. True
effects.
that. True that. Yeah.
So one somebody Roz Mix Production says it just simply 808s. So I'm guessing they want to know, you know, you the boom bap king. What is your take and approach to mixing 808s?
Yeah. Okay. So there's several different checks and things that I gotta look into 808. So an example, very often I want to make, actually I always make sure that the 808 is actually in key with the song, especially when the register is really low and you know the producer has been programming the 808 around, I don't know, 30, 40, 60 hertz in a scenario where the producer couldn't really hear the notes properly. It's very easy to go a half step wrong, or sometimes a lot more than that, you know. So I want to make sure that the notes are correct. That's the first thing. Second thing will be to make sure that they use a monophonic kind of DSP or playback, so that the tail of the previous note does not overlap the beginning of the next one. Because when you do that, oftentimes you got that flutter, that brrr thing that we don't want, right?
Yeah.
So that's very important. Then after that, I go and take a look at the dynamics. Again, chances are, if I'm lucky, that all the notes were, say, at 127 on the MIDI, like, so they're all the same intensity. Because if they're not, I want to make sure that they are for the most part. Now, obviously, if you go over octaves, so say like the first 2 or 3 notes are on this octave, and maybe there's a higher range of notes in the upper octave, those I would like for those to be a little quieter than the deepest ones, right? So
Yes.
I take a look at all of those things, and then after that, we're usually off to the harmonic content part of the mix. I like to always have, well, not always, but very often have some sort of sympathetic frequency above where the main one is. So again, if we're at 60, you know, if you play back your mix on a system that does not have anything under 80, you're assed out. You don't have any low end. So I want to make sure that I have a sympathetic mirror of that at maybe 120 or maybe 240, you know, the double or triple or maybe quadruple the harmonic content of that a tape saturation, for example, can generate. And that helps with having the song being able to have a bass line on smaller speakers, basically, right? And then after that, it's
how are you kind of creating that effect there?
that will be with distortion or harmonic generators, things like that. It could be as simple as like a tape emulation. It could be a saturator. It could be a lo-fi, you know, super cheap. It doesn't get any better than that, honestly. Oftentimes, that 1 or 2% is everything that you need, you know. Sometimes I'll go hardcore and I'll do some crazy distortion, like guitar pedal style distortions. And sometimes if I'm feeling really frisky, I'll go stereo with the shit, you know.
Okay. Dope. Let's see, what other questions do we have here? It seems like tilt. Make sure if y'all have more questions, y'all drop them in the question box so that they don't just go away in the chat. All right. Ear fatigue. I feel like it's not mentioned a whole lot, but is very important. Do you get ear fatigue, or is that something that you think about?
Yeah, mix quiet, guys. Like anytime in the studio, try to keep it as low as possible. And of course, it's fine to every now and again go, you know, spice it up a little bit, get a little loud, but that is very detrimental. So I think you need to kind of weigh out the pros and cons of that. You know, first of all, if you have clients with you, they will want to hear it loud, no doubt about it. Case closed. That's it. So you gotta handle that, manage that. Another way is well, no, and that's the thing, you know, ultimately it's how loud you want the wall of sound to hit your ears. I'm very lucky to be working in a room that's barely over 28 dBs, as it's stationary. It's basically silent. And then I have massive speakers that are like 110 decibels without a sweat. So they're extremely loud. They are also very precise, but they are extremely loud. So of course the tendency of cranking it up is always there. You know, I got this fucking volume knob right here, and it's like I gotta, you know, be mindful of that. And of course, when you get to work on music that you like, it's natural that you want to hear it louder, you know. But it's short-lived, because you'll see that after even a few minutes of cranking it loud, your ear fatigue will be around the corner and will probably stay for hours. So if you want to keep rocking for that day and for having a long career, you need to be mindful of that. Keep it as low as possible, as long as possible. Then, of course, occasionally you can go up, or maybe before you wrap up at the end of the day, you can blast it up, you know. No problem.
Is there like a rule of thumb that you use, like, you know, how loud, you know, or something to, how do you know what's loud enough and what's too loud in your opinion?
Yeah, so this monitor controller I have actually has the dBs indicator. So not only it gives you the number that you send the sound, but also the mic. So I'll pay more attention to what it's registering, but I know for sure that you know, somewhere around maybe 60 or 70 dBs, maybe quieter than that actually, is probably loud enough. No, of course, these numbers don't really mean much, because it depends on the frequency response of the speaker in the room, you know, and how loud the room is to begin with. If you have a room that's 50 dBs, go to 60 is actually not that much, you know. So it needs to be played. But I think at some point, when your studio career grows enough, people tend to learn and even understand the readings of your ears. So if you are aware that your ear is doing one of these to kind of retract because there's a lot of volume coming at you, that's probably way too much, you know. And this is the old DJ speaking, you know. I had a history of DJing at the club, loud ass nights. Yeah, you gotta be mindful.
Okay. Yes, definitely, man. That's dope. Great explanation. Let's see. We have one good question here. I know I've seen it. The question was, from Melly Montana is asking, what's your favorite vocal recording chain?
That would be a Neve 1073 for the preamp, pushing some sort of tube mic. Could be a 251, it could be a C800, one of those. I'm not very particular with that. I think they're more exchangeable than the preamps are. And then that going into an 1176 Silverface, 12 to 1, you know, fast attack and release, and then Pro Tools. That's it. Simple. I mean, I say simple. It's like, you know, we're talking about 40 grand worth of change. So
yeah, it's simple as long as you got the money.
yeah. And the room. That's the other thing.
The room. What's your favorite monitors that you're using to mix with, or what's on your desk now, I should ask?
NSTens have been for 20 years, maybe more, and Augsburgers have been for 10 or 15 years.
Okay, keeping it original New York style OG. That's New York flavor right there. NS10 and Augsburgers. Oh man. Okay, we got a bunch of dope questions here. Let me go back to these. What's your favorite mixing? That's just Scotty. He asks, what's your favorite mixing analogy to explain mixing to a non-music person? That's a fun one.
I got the best one. So here's what you say. Have you ever seen those ads in a magazine or whatever where you see the hot chick and then the super perfect hot chick because she's been photoshopped, or that she's gone through the diet before and after, or whack clothes, good clothes? That's it. Yeah. Or you can just show them my Instagram and there's a bunch of memes of the before and after of the mixes. That's probably even better.
Oh man, dope. Who else? Wayne Classic is asking, do you suggest mixing with headphones if your space is not treated?
Oh yeah. I definitely would suggest that. Even though mixing on headphones is far from ideal, but it's way better than to deal with a wonky frequency response of a room, for sure. So way better, yeah. And the reason why headphones mixes are still not ideal is because, first of all, you don't have a proper stereo presentation, because whatever is on the right will not be heard on the left at all, unless you do a little bit of the bleeding on Pro Tools, which you can, but still not ideal. And then the second reason is the proximity. You know, you got everything is on your eardrum, so getting that depth and the separation, and sometimes the low end is tricky, although a lot of headphones can reproduce the super deep low end. Again, it's a little difficult, but I will do headphones mixes any day of the week. if you happen to be working in a room that's not treated. In fact, that's exactly what I did on Donda when I started working on the album at Stadium. You know, I was literally in a freaking locker room, so you can imagine the acoustics of that place. It was terrible. So
Oh man,
headphones, it was, you know.
those headphones and a laptop. What other equipment did you have there in that locker room?
Literally my old iMac with Pro Tools, so my Pro Tools rig,
Hmm.
and my earbuds and my headphones. That's it. And they did have some studio speakers there that were not mine, but that's it. That's literally. But I only did, you know, maybe like a week at the most there, and then
Okay.
the rest I did at, you know, at proper studios, of course. But
Nice.
yeah, it was tough at first, though, for sure.
That's an interesting situation to be in.
Hmm.
Nels is asking a good question. What's the most important thing you've learned from building a studio from the ground up?
You don't know what you don't know. That's the thing. If I travel back in time, with knowing what I've gone through and still am, I don't know if I would do that shit again, man. It's a lot. Also because if for those that follow my YouTube, I have not only built a studio, I built the building in which
Yes.
there's a studio. So I went literally from the California dirt, like
Yes.
from Earth to this, you know. So that was a lot, like a lot. And but you know, that's the being naive of doing, you know, saying, you know what, I'm gonna build something from scratch. Yeah, that sounds great, and it is. Honestly, I'm very happy with it. But dude, the amount of work and sleepless nights and crying sometimes, like, has been a lot, you know, and it still is going, you know. So it's yeah.
Yes. It's a journey, man. I'm actually embarking on that journey now, so I'm gonna have to get a lot of tips and information from you. Luckily, the building's already there. I just need to do everything else.
That's good.
Man. All right, let's see what other. Let's get a couple more dope questions in here. Da, da, da. So are you okay? DJ Orion says. So are you asking for the full DAW session instead of just a folder of stems with the plugins baked in? Okay. Oh, you know what? It was a better question from DJ Orion. I knew I had one. Who's your favorite mix engineer besides yourself?
Oh, many for sure. Tony Maserati, like I've had the pleasure and the honor of citing him on some sessions. You know, we're
Mhm.
talking 15, 20 years ago. That
Yes.
changed my whole shit. And funny enough, Tony actually did not teach me anything audio wise, but he
Mhm.
taught me so much on everything else. You know, how to speak and communicate with clients and how to interact and all these things that are so priceless and very, very rarely taught. A lot
Can you
of
share some of those tips with us, like on speaking and communicating with clients? Some of that, what we would, a lot of people might call soft skills, right? But they're super important.
they're very, very important and hardly ever talked about. That's kind of interesting, you know. So much energy and attention and focus goes on to what is the setting for the 1176, which is important, of course, but there's no setting applied to anything if you can't talk to your freaking client, you know. So so yeah, it's very, very important. Yeah, well, so the most okay, the one of the things that in struck, how can I say, like, okay, the most interesting thing that I found was that when working next to these monster mixers, right? Um, I kind of came in the room thinking whoever the client is, you know, it could be Beyonce, it could be some nobody, it doesn't really matter. If they hire one of the goats,
Mhm.
they will be like, here it is, just do your thing. What do I know? Nope, that's not how it worked, or at least in my experience, you know.
Mhm.
In my experience, it was like ultimately it does not matter if the client is a kid with no accolades, it's still their fucking song. So
Yes.
they still get to say, hey, Mr. Big Shot Engineer, do it the way I want it. Shit.
Yeah.
Which to me was like, wait, what? Like, really? I just thought that, you know, for whatever reason, because of the huge, massive, decades wide accolades, somebody will be almost untouchable, you know, almost like, no, I get to choose how your shit sounds like because I got 38 Grammys, you know.
Yeah.
But that's not how it worked. And that was a major thing, you know. The humility and the humbleness of saying, I'm here at service. Yes, I have decades of experience, and I have them all in this box here that are ready for you to use, Mr. Artist or Mr. Producer, if you want them to be used by me on your music. But sometimes they're not supposed to be, you know. So that's that, like this kind of like aura, or just assumption that I made, that if somebody is huge, they can be touched. That's not the case. So that was the biggest thing, And the second thing will be like to communicate and always base the interactions and whatever I choose as a mixer not to be on the numbers, because like I was saying earlier, nobody will care that the kick has a Foreman at 37 hertz. Who the fuck cares? Nobody does. Of course, it's very useful information to us because we gotta build this building, right? But just like I was saying earlier with the rebar in a building, like nobody cares what the rebar is. I just don't want the shit to collapse. And so that there's that kind of conversation that I may have based before dealing with these big guys, and I will be like, say, hey, Miss Artist, the vocal has like a not so pleasing bump at 372. I need to address that. They don't give a shit. They don't need to give a shit. They don't need to know that. But if I do it and I do it too much, and they may come saying, hey, the vocal is a little hollow, then I need to understand that that's what they were talking about. And then I got to revisit my approach, because ultimately it's their baby. It's not my baby. It's not my ego. It's theirs. And I'm fine with that. That's part of my personality.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a super important aspect. We are, ultimately servants to the music and servants to our clients. So we, no matter how how big of an engineer we get, when we are in the studio, we're literally, the music is our boss, the client is our boss. So we got to all bow down to that.
Yep, 100%. And it's humbling, but that's what it is, And that's why sometimes, actually, very often, engineers are kind of mistreated or whatever. And I kind of see why that is. Not saying that that's correct, but we are at service, and you need to have the personality and the mindset of that. And yeah, I may be showing up with a freaking bow tie and stuff, but that doesn't mean it's my show. It's I'm like, okay, go for it.
I don't know, man. I think it's the Irko show when you're showing up.
I pull up with a funny car and my bow tie. You better believe it's a
show. And you got to bring that too, because you, at the same time, you're also an artist, right? You're painting a picture as well. You collaborating, and it's gonna be looked at as whoever's picture, Kanye or whatever. But you are also a painter who attributed to making that vision come to life. So there's definitely got to be some respect in that, and you have to have your own flair.
True that. And I sell my Italianism. I sell, I'm a fun guy, and I'm not for everybody, but I'm here for it. So if we want to rock together, let's do it.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think we had a dope conversation today. I appreciate you taking the time and to come and speak with me, and the people here today. I think they definitely engaged a lot, and they learned a lot from you. So definitely thank you. Shout out to everybody that's to following today and bought badges. That's super important. Irko, I definitely want to get more technical talk with you, and maybe even have like a like a session walkthrough and introduce you to the Wavy Seals Elite community that I mentioned earlier. So if you're down for that, I'd love to invite you to come and join us sometime in the future, and we continue to collaborate, continue to network, and if there's ever anything that I can do for you, please don't ever hesitate, man. This has been a eye-opening, fun experience, and I'm talking to one of the GOATs right now. So thank you again.
Thank you. Absolutely, man. And let me know next time you're in LA. We'll do something.
All right, definitely will, man. I'm gonna be out there sooner than later. Definitely out there for now. So if not sooner, I'll see you around that time.
Wayne, thank you so much, bro.
All right, peace, Irko.
Take care.
Peace out, everybody. Thanks for joining.